Every morning, you wake up and make a choice that determines your entire future. But you don't even know you're making it. It's not what college to attend, what career to pursue, or who to marry. It's much simpler and much more powerful. You choose your standards for that day. And here's what should terrify you. Most people choose the same low standards they chose yesterday, and the day before, and the year before that. They're living their lives on autopilot, flying straight into mediocrity. They wonder why nothing changes, why every year feels the same, why their dreams seem to get further away instead of closer. The answer is brutal in its simplicity. Nothing changes because their standards don't change. They're expecting different results from the same low expectations. The most dangerous poverty in the world is not the poverty of the pocket, but the poverty of the mind. There was once a man who won $7 million in the lottery. $7 million. Within 3 years, he was sleeping on park benches, begging for food. Not because someone stole his money, not because the economy crashed, but because his standards never rose to match his bank account. You see, money doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. And if your standards are low, no amount of external blessing can lift you beyond the ceiling you've built in your own mind. Your standards are the invisible architects of your destiny. They determine not just what you achieve, but who you become. Every single day, you're living proof of the standards you've accepted for yourself. Look at your life right now, your relationships, your career, your health, your spiritual walk. All of these are perfect reflections of the standards you've quietly agreed to. And here's what most people don't understand. You will never rise above the level of your own expectation. Never. I remember hearing about a carpenter who worked for a construction company for 30 years. He built houses the same way, year after year. Good enough to pass inspection, nothing more. Then one day the owner called him in and said, "I'm retiring as a gift. I want you to build one last house, but this time. I'm giving you unlimited budget. Build the best house you've ever built. When you're done, the keys are yours." Suddenly, this man who had been building average houses for 3 decades became a master craftsman. He sourced the finest materials. He paid attention to every detail. He worked overtime without being asked. Why? Because his standards changed the moment he realized he was building for himself. But here's the tragedy. We're all building for ourselves every single day. And most of us don't realize it. The quality of work you deliver, the effort you put into your relationships, the care you take with your health. You're not doing these things for your boss, your spouse, or your doctor. You're building the house you're going to live in for the rest of your life. And too many people are building shacks when they could be building mansions. The invisible ceiling I'm talking about is real. It's as real as any physical barrier. But it's far more dangerous because you can't see it. You've created it with every time you said, "That's good enough," when you could have done better. Every time you accepted less than you deserved. Every time you lowered your expectations to avoid disappointment. That ceiling is now your sky, and you wonder why you can't fly higher. Average people accept average results because average feels safe. Average doesn't require explanation. Average doesn't demand excellence. Average doesn't threaten anybody. When you're average, nobody questions you, nobody challenges you, nobody expects more from you. And that's exactly why average is the enemy of greatness. The moment you accept average in any area of your life, you've begun the slow death of your potential. I want you to understand something about human performance. We operate like thermostats, not thermometers. A thermometer simply reflects the temperature of its environment. When it's cold, it reads cold. When it's hot, it reads hot. It has no power to change anything. But a thermostat sets the temperature. When the room gets too cold, it kicks on the heat. When it gets too hot, it activates the cooling. Your standards are your thermostat. They determine the temperature of your life. Most people live as thermometers. They simply reflect whatever is happening around them. If everyone at work is showing up late, they show up late. If everyone in their family is overweight, they gain weight. If everyone in their circle is broke, they stay broke. They let their environment set their standards instead of letting their standards set their environment. But when you raise your standards, you become a thermostat. You start changing the temperature around you. When mediocrity creeps in, your standards kick in and elevate the situation. When excellence is demanded, you're already there because that's your normal operating temperature. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your standards. Think about this. Every great achievement in human history started with someone refusing to accept the current standard. Someone said, walking everywhere is not good enough, I'll invent the wheel, someone said. Candlelight is not good enough, I'll harness electricity, someone said. Dying from simple infections is not acceptable, I'll discover antibiotics. Progress happens when people raise their standards. Those standards are prophetic. They predict your future with frightening accuracy. Show me your standards today, and I'll show you your life 5 years from now. Because standards are not just about what you'll accept. They're about what you'll attract. Low standards attract low opportunities. High standards attract high opportunities. It's a law as consistent as gravity. The question is not whether you have standards. Everyone has standards. The question is, are your current standards taking you where you want to go? Because if you keep the same standards you've always had, you'll keep getting the same results you've always gotten. And if those results aren't what you want, it's time to raise the bar. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, right now. Because your life is waiting for permission to be extraordinary. And that permission comes from you deciding that ordinary is no longer acceptable. There's a story that haunts me every time I share it. In India, they train elephants for the circus using a method that's both simple and heartbreaking. When the elephant is young, just a baby, they tie its leg to a stake in the ground with a rope. The baby elephant pulls and tugs, trying to break free, but it's not strong enough. After days of trying, it finally gives up. Here's the shocking part. When that elephant grows to be 6 tons of pure muscle and power, they still tie it with the same small rope to the same small stake. An animal that could easily uproot trees, that could demolish buildings, remains captive to a rope it could snap like a thread. Why? Because it still believes what was true when it was small. You are that elephant. We all are. The ropes that bind us aren't made of hemp or chain. They're made of beliefs we accepted before we knew better. They're made of standards we inherited before we learned to think. And the most dangerous prison is the one where the prisoner doesn't know he's imprisoned. At least the elephant can see its rope. Your ropes are invisible, woven from words spoken over you, experiences that shaped you, failures that defined you. But childhood programming is still running your adult life. Someone told you that people like you don't succeed. Someone showed you that dreams are dangerous. Someone taught you that wanting more makes you greedy. Someone demonstrated that staying small keeps you safe. And you believed them. Not because they were right, but because you were young and they were big and you thought big meant wise. But let me tell you something about the comfort zone everyone talks about. It's not comfortable at all. Look at the person stuck in a dead-end job, afraid to walk away, comfortable. Look at anyone living below their potential. Pessimism vanishes in that. That was a football team. Comfortable. Look at anyone living below their potential, knowing they could be more. That's not comfort, that's fear, dressed up as wisdom. The comfort zone is a beautiful prison, because it decorates the bars with excuses. It hangs pictures of past failures on the walls to remind you why you shouldn't try again. It plays soft music called At Least I Have This to drown out the voice crying, but you are made for more. It serves familiar meals of mediocrity because excellence requires a taste for uncertainty. And most prisoners eventually fall in love with their cage because the cage promises something the wild never will: predictability. Your environment is programming you every single day, and you don't even notice. It's like living next to a highway. At first the noise is unbearable, but after a few weeks you stop hearing it. Your standards work the same way. Surround yourself with people who accept minimum wage thinking, and soon minimum wage feels normal. Surround yourself with people who tolerate disrespect, and soon disrespect feels normal. Surround yourself with people who've given up on their dreams, and soon giving up feels normal. This is why successful people seem unreasonable to average people. They refuse to accept what everyone else accepts. They demand what everyone else thinks is demanding. They expect what everyone else thinks is expecting too much. When everyone says that's just how things are, they say that's how things were. They're not unreasonable. They just have different standards. And those standards make them aliens in a world of settlers. The settlers are everywhere. They've settled for jobs that drain them, settled for relationships that diminish them, settled for health that limits them, settled for dreams that expired years ago. And the worst part, they want you to settle too. Not because they hate you, but because your refusal to settle reminds them of what they gave up. Your standards become a mirror that shows them their compromises. But here's what nobody tells you about settling for less than your potential. It costs more than reaching for it. Every day you accept less than you could be, you pay a price. Not in money. Money's just paper. You pay in life. You pay in the person you could have become. You pay in the impact you could have made. You pay in the legacy you could have left. You pay in the example you could have set. The cost compounds daily. Each time you say this is good enough when it's not. You make the next compromise easier. Each time you lower your standards to match your circumstances. Instead of raising your efforts to match your standards, you weaken your spiritual muscle. Each time you accept a limitation that exists only in your mind, you add another bar to your cage. I met a woman once who cleaned offices at night. 20 years. Same building. Same routine. One night, the CEO forgot something and came back to find her reorganizing his bookshelf. Not because it was a job, because disorder bothered her. They started talking. He discovered she had ideas about efficiency, systems, improvement, ideas she'd never shared because people like me don't talk to people like you. That conversation led to another. Those conversations led to opportunities. Today, she runs operations for that company. 20 years she had those ideas. 20 years she kept them to herself. 20 years she accepted a standard that said cleaners clean and execute. Your low expectations are prophetic. They predict a future of more of the same. But here's the beautiful truth. The moment you raise your expectations, you change the prophecy. The moment you refuse to accept what you've always accepted, you access power you've always had. The moment you break agreement with limitation, you break agreement with living below your birthright. The bondage of low expectations is voluntary. The rope that holds you has no strength except what you give it. The cage that contains you has no lock except your belief that it's locked. The ceiling that limits you has no substance except your agreement that it's there. And the powerful truth that changes everything, you can revoke that agreement right now. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances change, not when you feel ready, right now. Because freedom from low expectations doesn't begin with changing your situation. It begins with changing your standards. Excellence is not a gift. Excellence is not a talent. Excellence is not something you're born with. Excellence is a decision followed by discipline, repeated until it becomes automatic. Let me tell you about a man who understood this better than most. His name was William. For 15 years, he cleaned the bathrooms at Microsoft headquarters. Every night, while executives dreamed up the future in their offices above, William pushed his cart through empty hallways. But William had a secret. He wasn't just cleaning toilets. He was studying excellence. He watched how the company operated. He read every memo left on desks. He learned the computer systems by observing during his breaks. He took free online courses using the company Wi-Fi. He didn't just clean the building. He absorbed its DNA. One night, a crisis hit. The night IT manager had a heart attack. Systems were crashing. Millions in losses were mounting every minute. William stepped forward. "I can help," he said. They laughed. The janitor, but desperation makes people listen. William sat at that computer, and in 4 hours, he solved what the experts couldn't. Why? Because for 15 years, he'd been building the architecture of excellence in his mind today. William runs a division at that company. His title changed, but his standards never did. He was excellent when nobody was watching. So he was ready when everybody was. Standards are not feelings that come and go with your moods. Standards are decisions that shape your destiny. You don't feel your way into higher standards. You decide your way into them. And that decision must be renewed every single day until it becomes who you are, not just what you do. Watch how champions practice versus how amateurs practice. The amateur practices until they get it right. The champion practices until they can't get it wrong. The amateur stops when they're tired. The champion stops when they're done. The amateur practices to be good enough. The champion practices to be the standard others measure themselves against. Same activity, completely different standards. This is the compound effect nobody wants to talk about because it's not sexy. It's not instant. It's not exciting. But it's real. Every day, your standards are earning interest. Each day you become slightly worse than you were. High standards earn positive interest. Each day you become slightly better. The difference seems invisible today. In a year, it's noticeable. In 5 years, it's dramatic. In 10 years, it's transformational. A pilot shared something with me that changed my perspective forever. He said, "If I take off from New York heading to London, but I'm off by just 1 degree, I'll end up in a completely different country. 1 degree. That's all." Your standards are your compass. A small adjustment in your standards today means a completely different destination in your life tomorrow. Excellence is a habit, not an act. Aristotle said that. But most people misunderstand it. They think it means doing excellent things repeatedly. No. It means making excellence your default setting. It means excellence becomes so automatic that you have to work hard to be mediocre. It means raising your floor, not just your ceiling. Here's how to create systems that support higher standards. Stop focusing on goals and start focusing on systems. Goals are about the score. Systems are about the game. Goals are about the destination. Systems are about the journey. Everyone has goals. Not everyone has systems. The goal is to lose weight. The system is to pack your gym bag every night before bed. The goal is to write a book. The system is to write 500 words every morning before breakfast. The goal is to build wealth. The system is to automatically transfer 20% of every paycheck before you see it. Your systems reveal your true standards. Show me your daily routines, and I'll show you your real priorities. Show me your habits, and I'll show you your future. Show me your systems, and I'll show you your standards. Because systems don't lie. They do exactly what they're designed to do. I learned this from watching a master chef prepare a meal. Every tool in its place. Every ingredient measured precisely. Every movement purposeful. I asked him, "Don't you ever just throw things together?" He looked at me like I'd asked him to forget his name. "Excellence isn't a sometimes thing," he said. Either you are excellent or you're not. There's no middle ground. That's the architecture of excellence. It's built on the foundation of decision, framed with discipline, wired with systems, and finished with consistency. It's not about being perfect. It's about being purposeful. It's not about never failing. It's about failing forward. It's not about knowing everything. It's about growing everything. When you understand that excellence is architecture, not accident, you stop waiting for it to happen and start building it to last. You stop hoping for breakthrough and start constructing it daily. You stop praying for change and start creating it systematically. Because excellence isn't about talent. It's about standards made tangible through systems. Your mind is software. And most people are running on version 1 from decades ago. They're trying to navigate today's challenges with yesterday's programming. Think about it. Your phone updates its software regularly. But when did you last update your mental operating system? When did you last question the beliefs that run your daily decisions? Let me tell you about refusing to negotiate with mediocrity. There's no conversation to be had, no compromise to be made, no middle ground to be found. The moment you open negotiations with mediocrity, you've already lost. Because mediocrity is a skilled negotiator. It always asks for just a little. Just skip today. Just lower the bar slightly. Just make this one exception. But excellence doesn't negotiate. Excellence sets the terms. There was a young man named Marcus. His father was a drunk. His grandfather was a drunk. Every man in his family tree had the same story. Big dreams crushed by small bottles. Marcus was 17 when he made a decision that would change his family's entire trajectory. He looked at his father passed out on the couch and said, "This ends with me." Not, "I hope this ends with me." Not, "I'll try to end this." And how does he settle that? But this ends with me. Marcus didn't just stop drinking, he raised every standard in his life. Education became non-negotiable. Physical fitness became non-negotiable. Financial discipline became non-negotiable. Personal development became non-negotiable. Today, his children don't know what alcoholism looks like. They know what excellence looks like. They know what discipline looks like. They know what standards look like. 3 generations transformed because one person refused to negotiate with the mediocrity in his bloodline. Here's how you audit your current standards. Look at your calendar. It shows your priorities. Look at your bank statement. It reveals your values. Look at your relationships. They mirror your self-worth. Look at your body. It reflects your disciplines. Look at your mind. It displays your investments. These aren't judgments. They're measurements. And you can't improve what you... The language you use reveals the standards you accept. Low standards say, "I can't." High standards say, "I haven't learned how yet." Low standards say, "That's impossible." High standards say, "That's never been done before." Low standards say, "I don't have time." High standards say, "It's not a priority." Low standards make excuses. High standards make adjustments. Listen to how you talk to yourself. If you spoke to your friends the way you speak to yourself, would you have any friends left? Your internal dialogue sets your external standards. You can't live excellent while thinking average. You can't achieve greatly while believing small. You can't rise high while thinking low. The people you surround yourself with are either raising your standards or lowering them. There's no neutral. Every relationship is either adding to your excellence or subtracting from it. This isn't about being judgmental. It's about being intentional. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Choose wisely. I learned this lesson the hard way. I had a friend who specialized in small thinking. Every idea I shared, he had a reason why it wouldn't work. Every dream I voiced, he had a story about someone who failed trying something similar. He wasn't evil, he was just committed to being safe. But his safety was killing my dreams slowly. The day I changed my circle, I changed my ceiling. Here's what transformation looks like. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? You stop saying, I wish, and start saying, I will. You stop waiting for permission and start taking position. You stop explaining your standards and start executing them. You stop defending your decisions and start delivering your destiny. Your mental programming determines your life performance. Update the software. Delete the viruses of doubt. Install the applications of excellence. Run the programs of purpose. Because your mind is the most powerful computer ever created. But it's only as good as the programs you allow to run. The time for update is now. The system is ready. The only question is, are you? The saddest sound in the universe is not crying. It's not screaming. It's not silence. The saddest sound is the whisper of potential dying inside someone who had everything needed to let it live. I've stood at too many gravesides where we buried not just bodies, but books that were never written, businesses that were never started, inventions that were never created, ministries that were never launched. The graveyard is the richest place on earth because it's full of unfulfilled potential. Sarah Chen was 43 when she finally understood this. For 20 years, she painted in secret, masterpieces hidden in her garage. Beauty locked away in darkness. She had excuses, good ones. 3 kids to raise, bills to pay, a husband who called her art a nice hobby. But one morning, she woke up unable to move her right hand. The doctors called it a minor stroke. She called it a wake-up call. I realized I was one heartbeat away from dying with my music still inside me. She told me that day in the hospital, with her painting hand temporarily paralyzed, Sarah made a decision. If her hand healed, she would never hide her gift again. Not for approval, not for security, not for anything. 6 months later, her hand healed. Sarah held her first exhibition. She priced her paintings high, not because she was arrogant, but because she finally understood their value. The first painting sold in 10 minutes. By the end of the night, everything was gone. But here's the real miracle. Her teenage daughter came up with tears in her eyes and said, Mom, I never knew you were an artist. I thought you were just, Mom, now I know I can be more than just what people expect too. That's how standards work. They're magnets for opportunities. They can raise your standards. Work. They demand excellence from your standards. Then you demand excellence. Then you refuse to accept mediocrity. Mediocrity refuses to stay in your life, but it goes deeper. Your standards don't just change your life, they change your identity. You stop being someone who does excellent things and start being someone who is excellent. You stop having high standards and start being a high standard. The transformation is complete when excellence isn't what you do, it's who you are. And the ripple effect is generational. Every time you raise your standards, you raise the starting point for your children. Every time you break a limitation, you break it for those watching you. Every time you refuse to settle, you give someone else permission to reach. Your standards today become someone else's foundation tomorrow. I think about my grandfather, born into poverty so severe they didn't have words for it. But he had standards. Education was non-negotiable. Character was non-negotiable. Service was non-negotiable. He died with few possessions but rich in legacy because of his standards. His children started where he could only dream of reaching. because of their standards. We started even higher. That's how generational wealth is really built. Not with money, but with mindset. This is your moment of decision. Not tomorrow's moment, not next year's moment. This moment, right now, as these words reach your spirit. Something is shifting. You feel it. That restlessness. That's your potential demanding release. That frustration. That's your excellence refusing to stay buried. That voice saying there must be more. That's your true self preparing to emerge. The time for playing small is over. The season of accepting less is finished. The era of negotiating with mediocrity has ended. Today, you raise your standards. Today, you declare that average is no longer acceptable. Today, you decide that the pain of unfulfilled potential is greater than the pain of pursuing excellence. Your life is waiting for permission to be extraordinary. That permission comes from you. Grant it now. Raise your standards. Change your life. Transform your legacy. The world is waiting for what you've been hiding. Release it. The cemetery has enough treasures. Let yours live.